to the Messy Truth. I'm Dan Jones. Thank you for being here. The one and only Arnold Schwarzenegger is in the house tonight. We're going to have him. We got a live audience here to ask him questions, and it's going to be fantastic. See? I've been working on that. Okay, but before we bring him out, I want to talk about a couple other names in the news. Donald Trump, Susan Rice, and Jared Kushner. Now, with his usual zero facts and no evidence, President Trump today declared that Susan Rice is guilty of a crime. What crime? Didn't say. And with the same zero facts, he says that Bill O'Reilly is innocent. Now, I'm going to get to Bill O'Reilly later in the show, but let me say a couple of words about Susan Rice. The right-wing media wants to burn Susan Rice at the stake for doing her job. That's it. Susan Rice was our national security advisor. To give good advice, you got to ask good questions, especially when fishy-looking stuff lands on your desk. Okay? Now, finding out for yourself of sketchy people doing possibly sketchy things is called unmasking. Okay? Now, it doesn't mean revealing that to the whole world. That would be illegal. It does mean revealing those names to yourself at your desk so you can do a better job advising the president. As best we can tell, that's all she did. Her job. Now, if she were a terrible person, up to no good, trying to ruin Donald Trump, you know what she would have done? What she could have done? She could have called a press conference in the middle of the election, like James Comey did from the FBI. Okay? She could have run around screaming bloody murder. Look what I found. Look what I found. She didn't do that. She got very disturbing information, and she looked into it. And as best we can tell, she did her job inside the proper channels. For doing this, Donald Trump should give Susan Rice the Presidential Medal of Freedom, okay? Somebody like Comey would have run to the cameras, created a huge firestorm, and possibly wrecked his campaign. So Republicans should love Susan Rice. They should thank Susan Rice. Thank you for being a professional. Instead, they're throwing fits. Why? Maybe they don't want you to think about what Susan Rice unmasked. People on Trump's team possibly playing footsie with bad guys from Russia. Let's not get distracted. Now, speaking of Trump's team, Jared Kushner is the opposite of Susan Rice. He has zero qualifications for his job, except that he married Ivanka. Nobody even knows what his job is. He's wandering all around the world, riding his little tricycle all around the world, saying God knows what to God knows who. Okay, trained diplomats worry that one wrong word could put us on a path to war. We have no idea what kind of messes Jared's out there creating right now. So if Republicans are concerned about the proper functioning of our government, they should call hearings on Jared and his role and point to Susan Rice as an example of how to follow protocol. Now, how's that for a messy truth, huh? How's that for a messy truth? So, let me welcome to the stage somebody who knows how to run government the right way, because he ran this beautiful state of California very well for 2 terms, the one and only Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. Good to see you, sir. Really good. Oh, my goodness. Doesn't get any bigger than that. Wow.
Well, thank you very much for the nice introduction.
Well, it's glad to have you here.
It's exactly the way I wrote it. And I like that now you're starting with the accent.
Yeah, don't try. Don't try.
That's funny.
We've had a great day today. You know, he knows that it's hard. It's a hard accent to mimic. We had a great day. We started out dealing with young people, and you're so passionate about the young people. And we have students who are here. We've got people from your institute at USC. A bunch of students are here. We also have young people from your program, your after-school program, After School All-Stars. Give a round of applause to the young people who he's helping every day. Thank you for being here. It means a lot. Look, I watched you You didn't know I was watching you. But when we were together, and you were looking at those kids, I was looking at you. You love those kids. You love those kids. And I want to ask you a question. Do you think that Donald Trump's budget reflects the values of a man who loves kids the same way that you do?
Well, look, I understand when people have budget problems and we try to cut down the deficit and all of those kind of things, because I've gone through it when I was governor. But the fact of the matter, when you try to cut the budget, and the first thing you do is you start cutting children's programs, especially after-school programs that are so important to our families, to our kids, and you try to balance the budget on the backs of those kids, I think there's something wrong. And this is why I spoke up. And this is why I challenge him on that. And I think it is extremely important that we do everything that we can to get this $1.2 billion back in the budget, because the kids need it. After-school programs is an extraordinarily great program. And he has talked so much about making America great. And I just feel like taking $1.2 billion away from the kids is not making America great.
Well, it's kind of hard to argue with that. Are you going to go and fight, though? Listen, Republicans were saying, oh, we don't like Trump, we don't like Trump. As soon as he got in there, they all fell over. Are you actually going to go to D.C. and do something about it, or are you just hoping and praying?
Yeah, first of all, let me just tell you that the history of this is after Bill Clinton has made it possible that we have the 21st century money in the first place, every president since then has taken it out of their budget. I remember that President Bush took it out. We immediately went back to Washington and lobbied, and we brought Democrats and Republicans together.
So you're going to do that this time?
And we did it also after that. We did it again with Obama. We did it now. And we're going to go and get organized again and do it again. It's just that simple. We're not going to let anyone take that money away, because this is what helps kids so much to have a program after school, because 70% of the kids come from homes where both of the parents are working.
Governor, you got a big heart, and you care, and you're out there for the good stuff, and yet Donald Trump doesn't seem to see you in the good way that you do, in the way that we do. Here's what Donald Trump had to say about you, and I want to get your reaction to this. He said it at the National Prayer Breakfast.
I hired a big movie star, Arnold Schwarzenegger, to take my place, and we know how that turned out. The ratings went right down the tubes. It's been a total disaster, and Mark will never, ever bet against Trump again. And I want to just pray for Arnold, if we can, for those ratings.
Now, this is the President of the United States. You're laughing. You're laughing. You see, he's laughing.
Because I think it's funny.
Well, well, the President of the United States at a prayer breakfast says this. Why do you think it's funny?
Well, I think it is funny that he uses a prayer breakfast. I think, plus, I have thick skin. I mean, this doesn't bother me at all. And it's very funny, and it gave me an opportunity to then go and shout back and say, that the show didn't do well because, 1/3 of the audience left because they boycott the show because you're the executive producer, Donald Trump. If you would have just not opened up your mouth and tell everybody that you're the executive producer, we would have had really great ratings on the show. But the advertisers left, the audience left. They hate the guy. So, so they left, and so I was caught in the middle of this political thing there.
Well,
and so I said, that's why I said I'm not going to do the show again.
Well, I understand, but I'm going to challenge you, though, because, a lot of Republicans who think like you, who maybe have more so-called moderate views, I think there were 16 of them, 17 of them standing on the stage. Donald Trump mowed them all down. So how does it make you feel when you think about the fact that the party, and those Republican voters, they may not like your show, but they sure like Donald Trump?
Well, that's perfectly fine. Look, I think that Donald Trump won the presidency. And I called him right after he won, and I said, congratulations, you are now our president. Anything I can do, I will be helpful. Because if you are successful, we all are going to be successful. And I said the same thing also about Obama and the Republicans when I went to this Republican fundraiser in California. And Obama just won. And I said to them, look, now we all have to go and help Obama be successful. I said, because he's our president, the people have spoken, I believe in the democracy and in our voting system and everything like that. And so I push, and they kind of like, ooh,
They like that.
And I tried to tell them, I said, no, 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 no. I said, it is extremely important that we think of it as Americans here, not as Republicans versus Democrats. And this is what is wrong right now with the country. It is so divided. Everything is about Democrats versus Republicans. I feel the parties have to come together. And I think that the only way they will come together eventually is if we have redistricting reform, which is another thing that I'm very passionate about, as you know.
And we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but you said you called him. Now, that means you must have his phone number. Are you guys friends?
We have been friends for many, many years, for decades, as a matter of fact.
Well, why is he so mean to you?
We run into each other in professional wrestling. We have run into each other. As a matter of fact, he was wanting to contribute to my campaign when I ran for governor. And the only thing why we didn't accept his money was because it was from a gaming casino. And I didn't accept any money from gaming casinos and from gambling and from unions and so on. So I had a certain list of things where I didn't accept any money. But so we had a very good relationship. The only thing is, what I think what ticked him off is obviously the fact that I didn't vote for him and that I came out and said I'm not going to vote for him and I would urge others not to vote for him. So I think that ticked him off, and the reason why I didn't want to, vote for him is simply because just alone the issue that he wanted to bring coal back. And I said to myself, I've been fighting for a clean environment since the time I've come into the governorship, and we got to go and clean our environment. We got to go into a green energy future. We have 7 million people die every year because of pollution, and I told him that. And I said, so therefore I cannot endorse you because you want to bring coal back. The next thing you want to bring back is horse and buggies, or Blockbuster, or pages and stuff like that. I said, well, what are we talking about? I said, I don't think that you're a man of the future.
Well, I'd like to bring somebody in, an actual Trump supporter. Randy is here in L.A. trying to fly the Trump flag in L.A. God bless you. What do you have to say?
So I actually have been organizing the Trump rallies in Southern California, Hollywood, and L.A. area since August, which is comprised mostly of informed Democrats, a lot of minorities, homeless people, and veterans. And we are intrigued to see if anything can be done to stop people from spitting at us and on Trump's star. A lot of people don't know that Trump's star was vandalized and destroyed. So when we're out on the streets, it's a constant that we are spit at. And there's a lot of minorities and Democrats who are being spit at by the haters. So, yeah, we're just intrigued if there's anything that you think can be done, because most of us out on the streets supporting Trump want to unify, and a lot of us are just anti-establishment at this point.
Well, first of all, let me just say that it is very sad that America has gotten to the point where they look at the other side as the enemy, because they're not the enemy. He's a Democrat. I'm a Republican. I don't look at him as the enemy. I love the kind of work that he does.
And I'm glad that you don't, sir.
No, but I mean, it's ridiculous. It used to be where both of the parties worked together. And this is what it's supposed to be. And I think that it goes back to George Washington. President Washington warned us of that. He always said that he's not a party man. But if we have two parties, I think they have to get together and work together. And this is why it is so important that we understand that redistricting, the way the politicians draw the district lines, is where they draw it in such a way that the Republicans get locked into one district and the Democrats in another, and they get further and further apart. So when they come to Washington or to Sacramento or any of the capitals, they can't really work together. It's just the other side becomes the enemy. We got to get rid of this problem. I think it is extremely important that we respect each other, that we can have a fair debate and argument about the issues. It is okay to have different point of views and different ideologies and all of those things. But to me, when I got into office, it was all about how can I bring Democrats and Republicans together, because the action is only when you together solve problems, because then it sticks. Look what happened. President Obama started signing executive orders because he couldn't get anything done through Congress. And now they're all gone, those executive orders. And now Trump is signing executive orders and not doing it through Congress. They will be gone. The next president comes in. So it's not a long-lasting kind of a legacy if you do that. You've got to work with Congress. You've got to be a leader. You've got to bring both of the parties together. Now, it is very difficult to do that right now, as you know, because of the way they rigged the system. and the way they draw the district lines. That's why in California, we have taken the drawing of the district lines away from the politicians. Now, I campaigned on that for many years, and eventually we had the people approve it. We put it on a ballot, an initiative. Right. And the people approved it. Finally, after the third time, they approved it.
You had that great line. You had that great line that the United States is the only place where, rather than the voters picking the politicians were picking the voters by rigging the system.
This is the way it is. They draw the district lines and they pick the voters, the politicians, instead of the voters picking the politicians. Yeah. So they rigged the system in such a way, and so we got rid of that in California.
Well, Governor, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that when we get back.
Okay.
But stick with us.
You promise?
I promise. Hey, listen. I got the governor. I got you what he said. So listen, when we get back, we're going to have more questions from the audience. Plus, we're going to ask whether we are ever going to see the name Schwarzenegger on the ballot again when we get back. That's good. Tonight is the man they used to call the Governator, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Governor, you've been a star Republican for a very long time. In fact, here you are at the GOP convention in 2004.
When I was a boy, the Soviets occupied part of Austria. I saw their tanks in the streets. I saw communism with my own eyes. Today, the world no longer fears the Soviet Union, and it is because of the United States of America.
Now look, that was then, back when Republicans were standing up to Russian invaders. Now you got Trump, he's got this bromance with Putin. Putin is attacking other countries, he's repressing his own people. As a Republican, how do you make sense of that? I mean, you're a freedom-loving, liberty-loving Republican, and yet you've got a Republican president who seems to be, best buddies with somebody who has invaded country. You know what that's like. You know what that's like.
Well, first of all, I know, and because of a bipartisan commission has just decided that, yes, Russia was involved in our elections. So I think this is interesting to know, because, again, this goes back to Washington when you talked about the problem by parties fighting so much that some outside force can come in and interfere in our political system. When I read it, it didn't make any sense, but now it does make sense because we have seen it, unfold in front of our very eyes. If Trump has any connections with them or not, that we have not really established yet, so I don't know, and I have not seen any of the secret papers and all these things that maybe point to it, but I haven't seen it, so therefore I cannot really comment on that.
But I would just want, politically, he doesn't seem to be as tough on the Russians, and it almost seems like he wants us to be, maybe look the other way. Does that worry you? I'll put it this way.
I think, to be honest with you, I mean, every president has their own strategy. I think that, as you remember, with President Nixon and Henry Kissinger, they paved the way to not look at China as just the enemy, but start working together with them. He then flew over to China, visited them. The Chinese premier flew over here, visited Nixon and all this stuff. So I think that opened up relationships. So I don't
sometimes it can work out.
I don't mind when people reach out. I think it's the key thing for the United States to go and look at the world and say we're trying to have as many friends as possible, and maybe through a friendship we can go and tone things down and kind of work together on various different issues that are international issues. So I don't know what his plan is. I've never talked to Trump about it, but I mean, let's just see what the future holds.
So let me just rewind the clock back, though, now for you. You were a young man. You were in Austria, modest background. You looked at America and you said, you know what, I think I can go there. They love freedom. They're going to open their arms to me. I can go. I can make a big difference. Would a young Arnold Schwarzenegger now, looking at America now, with so much of the anti-immigrant conversation, even coming from the White House, would a young Arnold Schwarzenegger have come to America? Would you come to America today as a young guy?
Absolutely.
Why?
Well, I tell you, I happen to get around the world a lot, because of promoting movies, promoting the Arnold Classic Sports and Fitness Festival, promoting Special Olympics. I just came from Austria, celebrating the Special Olympics, International Winter Games over there, and being with the athletes, because I'm the international coach for them. I'm traveling around giving speeches about environmental issues. So I travel around a lot. I've never, ever seen anyone come up to me and say, man, I cannot wait to move to China. Or can you help me? Or can you help me get a visa to the Middle East? or I want to go and move to Africa or something like that. Everyone wants to come to California.
Yeah.
This is the place to be. Everyone loves this place. And even though we criticize America, and I remember Trump during the campaign ran around and said, make America great again. America is great. What are we talking about, great again? America is great. It's the greatest country in the world by far. Yes, we have problems, but it's the greatest country by far. Of course I would have come over here. I remember that when I was a kid, 10 years old, and I saw a documentary film in school, and I saw these huge skyscrapers and the airplanes and the freeways and, you know, Hollywood and all this. I said to myself, what am I doing in Austria? What am I doing in this little farm village here? I want to be over there, and I did everything that I could to come to America. And there is millions of people out there that feel the same way. This is the land of opportunity. You will never have the opportunities anywhere else like in America.
Tougher question for you then. Your party does not seem to agree with you in the same way. That enthusiasm is not there in the same way. If you had come, young Arnold now, would you join this Republican Party, given how tough they are on immigrants?
That I don't know what my thinking would be if I would be, you know, now 21 years old when I came over here. I just tell you that I was absolutely in heaven when I heard Nixon talk. It was the campaign between Nixon and Humphrey, and I heard Humphrey talk, and it was like, wait a minute, I'm back in Austria again. And then, and then I heard Nixon talk. It was refreshing, you know, to open up and to have world trade and to be strong military, strong law enforcement, you know, get government off your back. And all of this kind of dialogue that I've heard was so appealing to me that I said to my friend, I said, what party does he belong to? And he says, and my friend was a Democrat, and he says, disgusting, disgusting. He says he's a Republican. And then I said, well, then I'm a Republican. I said, so he was disgusted about it because he was a Democrat. But, you know, so I fell in love with the party. And I'm you know, when you think of me as a Republican, I am a Lincoln, Teddy Roosevelt, Ronald Reagan Republican. I mean, what that really means is that, you know, Lincoln was, you know, during the time wanting to free slaves. The Republican Party then voted overwhelmingly. As a matter of fact, the Democrats were nowhere to be found then, but the Republicans voted overwhelmingly to get rid of slavery, to make them join the United States, to give blacks a vote, you know, to also have a, you know, voting right in order. So that was the Republican Party that I could identify. And the same is with Teddy Roosevelt, who put more land aside for conservation, who was a great environmentalist inspired by John Muir, a Californian. And then, you know, Nixon, who was trying to do healthcare reform, universal healthcare in 1974, and Kennedy, of course, derailed that one, you know, because he couldn't handle that the Republican was doing healthcare reform and all this stuff. So, I mean, Reagan created the Air Resources Board as a Republican to clean the environment.
I'm going to
so
ask
those are the kind of Republicans that I could identify with.
So you name Lincoln, you name Reagan. Are you a Trump Republican?
I'm not a Trump Republican. No, that's why I didn't vote for him.
Just check. Just check. Very good. We got some young people here. I want to give Alec a chance to ask you a question. Been very patient.
Absolutely.
In light of some mixed signaling over the last few months with President Trump in regards to his allies backing off from some allies and also the return of protectionism, how can the United States maintain its credibility and leadership on the global stage?
I think that the United States is very much respected internationally, and I think the key thing is it's one of those things. It's like gardening. You know, when you do gardening, the only way you have a great garden is if you go and attend the garden every day. You put out the weeds every day, you sprinkle the water every day, you put new seeds in every day, you attend and you do work on that all the time. That's the way it is with relationships. If it's foreign relationships, if it's relationships with the other party and all this stuff, it's all about relationship building. And I think that, you know, it is key for us to have a strong direction, let the world know what the direction is, what we really stand for. That is the key thing.
Good. And so you are famously passionate about after-school programs. You have the after-school all-star program. One of your youth is here. Sitlali has a question.
Ever since I was in elementary school, I've always relied on after-school programs. My parents were always working late, and then when my father died when I was in the 3rd grade, I began living in a single-parent home. My mother could no longer afford to pay for after-school care in elementary school, but luckily in middle school I found after-school all-star, which is free. And now that I'm in high school, I no longer have an after-school program. And I have to take the school bus, the public bus, and walk home every day from school. In light of these budget cuts, how can we ensure funding for after-school programs, not only in elementary and middle schools, but in high schools as well? And what can everyone do to help?
And you know, but even before you, first of all, give her a round of applause. That's you know, we got young people like this all over the country who are benefiting. And thank you for your work and for your commitment. But you know, a lot of Republicans would say, hey, listen, you know, helping a kid like that, that's some pork barrel stuff. So, you know, answering our question, to keep that in mind, you got a lot of people in your party who say, it's just pork barrel.
Well, first of all, let me just say, I think that it is really wonderful to have you stand up here and ask a question in front of all of those people and millions of people that watch this show. So congratulations. Let's give her a big hand for that. You did a great job. Now, it's a very good question because, as you know, California is the only state that is really way ahead of every other state when it comes to after-school programs. What we did was we passed an initiative in California, Proposition 49, the After School Education and Safety Act, that I, partially sponsored and drove all the way until it won, and that gave us $550 million of after-school money. And so now this is why every elementary school and middle school in California has after-school programs. But we didn't get enough money to also include high schools. So this is where the problem comes in, that what you're talking about here. And so I think that we have to go back another time and ask the people maybe for another few $100 million a year, and we will do that, to go back again to the people and to say, because when we tested it, when we originally did it, when it went to $1 billion, people were not for it. But when we kept it below $500 million, it was $428 million exactly in the beginning, and now it rose up to around $550 million. So we just have to get back and get more money. And the key thing is to keep the federal money, because this $1.2 billion is extremely important, and this is why I promised the kids today that this is not unanswered. We're going to be in Washington.
He'll be back.
We're going to lobby in Washington, and we're going to bring Democrats and Republicans together, because this is not a party issue. This is a people's issue. This is the important thing. We got to see this as a people's issue.
Listen, I love your passion. I want you to stick around. Look, Schwarzenegger, you know, Arnold saved the world many times on the big screen, but he also tried to save it in real life when he was fighting for clean air and clean water and clean energy as California's governors. Now, both parties might want to listen up right now because we're going to talk about this, but let me get in first. Republicans, please, on the issue of the environment, please stop talking about job-killing regulations. That's a false choice. It's a false binary. Without regulations, your kids would be breathing polluted air. They'd be drinking poisoned water. Your city would be covered in lethal smog the same way they are in China. So America should never, ever have to choose between job-killing regulation, so-called, or child-killing deregulation. Americans are smart enough to know how to grow our businesses and make money and create jobs while restoring the earth and respecting the health of our children. That's for Republicans. Democrats, you know all this, but you always get lost in all this doomsday stuff. Give people some hope for once. I mean, for example, you got solar panel installers. These are good people making a good living. We got hundreds of thousands of clean energy jobs in America in solar and wind. We never brag on them. Those clean energy solar panels can cut an energy bill from $200 a month to $2 a month. That's good for workers, for homeowners, and the earth. So both parties have got to do better. But, sir, your party, I just don't understand. You talked about Teddy Roosevelt. The first conservationist was a Republican. Now you got a head of the EPA, doesn't believe in science. You got a former oil executive running the State Department. And Donald Trump just rolled back a decade's worth of climate protection. What can you say to Republicans who are watching right now to get them back on the good side when it comes to the environment?
Well, first of all, traditionally our party was very, very pro-environment. As you said, not only Teddy Roosevelt, but Ronald Reagan created the EPA, created the Air Resources Board in California.
Nixon did the EPA.
And Nixon created the EPA in Washington.
So what happened?
And Bush negotiated the acid rain deal, which was the first kind of cap and trade deal. And so it was a great, great history.
What happened?
Wait a minute. The other thing that I want to remind you of, and I want to remind the people is, it's not just Republicans. It's also Democrats. Because when you go to those states where they, get coal, where they have the coal mines, those representatives, senators, and congressmen and governors are fighting for those coal jobs, and they are Democrats, and they are fighting for the coal jobs. So you have both parties, but you're absolutely correct that the Republican Party has now gone and decided they're going to go and, maybe get the campaign contributions from coal industry, or maybe get the campaign contributions from the oil companies, and that's why they're catering to them. There's many reasons why that is.
What are your best arguments? What are your best arguments? I've heard you make incredible arguments. What are the best arguments for Republicans?
The best argument is whenever they say, first of all, if you believe in global warming or not, that is irrelevant, because 7 million people die every year because of pollution. That is much more than die of traffic accidents, homicide, suicide, wars, everything together. So to me, that is inexcusable, and we have to do something about that. In America alone, 200,000 plus people die every year because of pollution. Now, it is government's responsibility to protect the people. And so we do all kinds of things to protect the people, that they have helmet laws so that you don't you hurt yourself when you have a motorcycle crash or a bicycle crash, and all those kind of things to protect the people. But when it comes to the pollution, they're not there to protect the people. So this is, I think that everyone, both of the parties, need to work together. Republicans a lot of times say, as you remember, when we fought Proposition 23, Republicans say, well, if we go green, then it means that we lose jobs, the economy will go down and all this. It's all nonsense. Because the fact of the matter is, in California, we have a 4.3% economic growth, GDP growth. And the nationwide GDP growth is only 1.7%. We in California are way ahead economically. We are #1 in tourism. We are #1 in our industries. We are #1 in entertainment. We are #1 in agriculture, #1 in biotech, in high-tech, in all those things, in nanotech. Everything we are #1. How is that possible when we have the strictest environmental laws in the United States? So we've proven you can do both.
Wow.
You can protect the environment and you can protect the economy at the same time. It's that simple.
You can drop the mic with that one, sir.
Okay.
Well, listen, I want to turn to a more close-to-home subject and bring Rodrigo into this conversation. I know you're still in grief, but I hope you will raise your question with the governor.
Yes, Governor, nice to see you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to see you.
Back on February 19th, my fiance and son were driving back from church when they were tragically killed, T-boned by an illegal immigrant. My son was in the vehicle, saw his mom die, and from this illegal immigrant who has been deported 5 times, multiple felon, 3 DUIs. Nobody's reached out to us, not Chief Beck, not the mayor, but our President Donald Trump reached out to me and gave me his condolences. I was fortunate enough to vote for Donald Trump. My question to you is this, what are we going to do about the problems that we have here in this city that feels so much like a sanctuary city? How are you and Donald Trump going to come together and fix the issues that we have? Now, you pointed out that about these after-school programs and the kids, et cetera, but I have a 12-year-old son now that's only has one parent. I'm a single parent now, unfortunately. So I need to know is how are you going to fix that with Donald Trump?
Well, first of all, I'm not in office, okay? So, but I mean, one thing I can tell you, through our institute, we have been working very hard on immigration reform. This needs comprehensive immigration reform. And the sad story is that Democrats and Republicans have not been able to come together in decades on this issue. There is a bipartisan plan where 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans got together, and they came up with a really great immigration plan. But that was shut down. So now both of the parties can get anything done. But may I remind you, not just on immigration, on anything else either. Congress can get anything done And this is why we have a problem with the redistricting. And I go back again to the redistricting. If we would draw the district lines, we would talk about it, you say, later on. But we need comprehensive immigration reform, which means that we have to secure our borders, number one. Number two, we have to go and redo our visa system. We have to make sure that the students can go and stay here after they have studied and they've gone to universities rather than sending them back. We got to give temporary working permits, more guest workers programs and stuff like that, make it really legitimate and secure the border. There's a whole bunch of issues that need to be addressed. They have to get together. It's a complex issue, and they have not been able to work together. That's why we have problems like that, and this is why I am in a way upset when I know that Congress has a 15 to 18% approval rating, and they get reelected. 98% of them got reelected last time. So that is your problem. Your problem is you have to go and fight that system and go and make them redraw the district lines so we have a coherent system.
You've raised this issue numerous times, and we have somebody here who is an expert at this and who's actually a victim of this entire thing. Nobody talks about this. You know about this, Margaret. Part of the reason we can't get anything done is because the system's been rigged to make sure only extremists can be elected. Margaret, ask her a question.
Thank you, Van, very much. I appreciate being here. Redistricting, I think, Governor, and I think you think as well, has changed our elective process more than anything else in the recent past. Republicans came to my state, North Carolina, and armed with private computers which had surgically precise software loaded onto them, and they manipulated the district boundaries so that their candidates would win. Now, real people with real issues live in these districts, not only in my state, but all over the country. And they are entitled to be able to elect candidates of their choice, not candidates selected by partisan political operatives. So my question to you, Governor, is how do we fix this artificial firewall that has been erected between our elective process and the will of the American people?
Well, first of all, I want to say my condolences to you. It's horrible, the story that you just told us. So sorry about that. But to get to your question, the only way we can do it is what we did in California. I mean, when California goes, the rest of the nation goes. That's what they always say, and that's exactly what we want to do. In California, we have reformed the system. We now, they're an independent panel. We're drawing the district lines. We took this power away from the politicians, and since then, things have changed. Now, all of a sudden, the Republicans are talking about immigration reform. Now, all of a sudden, the Democrats are siding with the Chamber of Commerce and voting 90% with the Chamber of Commerce. So things have totally changed since then. And this is the kind of thing, it's not the only way to make changes, but it is a very important step forward. And there is 37 states in the United States where they have an initiative process where they can do the same thing as we have done in California. Then there's other states where you can do it through the legislators. And if that doesn't work, then you can go do it the judicial way. And we have seen that already, in the works. And the Supreme Court usually sides with the people. Yeah. They want the district lines to be drawn by independent
I sure wish that you could be on the ballot for the presidency or something else. You've hit every issue brilliantly. I want to thank you for being here. Give them a round of applause. Now, listen. Up next.